welcome back. Now in the last video we learned how to import a specific model. You'll remember that I actually imported my BIM model. You can see that here. In this video we're going to be looking at the interface, just the overall environment about how we work. So let's get started. Here I'm on my buildings tab. So this is primarily the first thing we'd have to amend when going through a project. In the building tab we have our 3D view, of course. Now this 3D view, we can view our architectural model and also our installation as well once we've done it. You can see that the 3D view has some options here. Let's start off by this option on the top left here. This is the elements option. So here I can turn on and off the different views corresponding to my model. So here you can see my BIM model. So that what this corresponds to is the option to toggle on or off the different layers that are associated with this model. So as you can see here, if I move this a bit to the left, so I can see some changes. You can see the Durango, which is the architectural model. If I turn that off, you can see that the actual architectural elements turn off, and I'm just left with the facades on the outside. Now the facades here is the Foki facades. I can turn that off, and you can see that the facades can be disabled as well. We can also have three different views. So you can see I have a solid view, I have a transparent view, and I have a full view. A solid, a transparent, and a wireframe view, as you can see here. So three different types of views that I'm able to toggle on and off simply by clicking the cube next to the light bulb, which corresponds to either having it visible or hidden. Now, on top of that, we have the elements. So the different elements associated with my building. So if I can I'll turn off the BIM model for a second. As you can see here, we just have the outline of the building. So this is the fundamental aspects, fundamental elements that Eplus imports. So you can see here the walls, floor slabs, openings, edges, own shadows, and external faces as well. And I'm able to toggle on and off the different views corresponding to the walls, floor slabs, and openings. So facades, partitions, basement walls for floor slabs, and things of that nature as well. For project as well, you can see here that I have the different floors that I'm able to toggle on and off as well. So as you can see. So that's a bit about the 3D view. You can see here as well, if we move on, we have the projection tab, so we can project the view in different axes. Here we have the projection type, so I'm able to move that around. I can also rotate about a certain point. Rotate about the camera angle, so I'm able to do that. So I can rotate about 1 point, sorry. As you can see, the point is where I've initially started the click, and that's corresponding by the pink orbit there. Let's make this a bit bigger. Turning all those off, you can see here I can also create a view corresponding to the point I'm at that particular moment. So if I move around, you can see I can move it at a particular camera angle, rotation about the camera, yeah. Also, let's move on. We have the ability to cut sections perpendicular to a particular axis. So here, X, Y, and Z axis. For instance, the Z axis, if I can do that, I can actually move up and down. I can actually cut the building corresponding to that axis. Also have the ability to show and hide different planes. I have some 3D options as well, so I can improve my object edges. So let's turn on the architectural model here to get a better view. And you can see here I get the edges of my building a bit better defined. I can also improve the object lighting as well. I'm going to turn those off for now. And the last one is simply just to capture a certain part of the building using this magnifying glass tool. So that's great for obviously report generation and things such as that nature. Then we'll move up to the top here. So our buildings tab, we have our general data. So our general data basically means the different codes and practices that we'd like to use within the program. You can see here we have our condensation checks. So check for the existence of surface and interstitial condensation in accordance with ISO, so that's the international code. We can also amend the different energy conversion factors here. You can see here, of course, these are all the saved factors. You can change those as well simply by clicking and making an amendment. We can also define the final electricity energy generated and also consumed. So either defined or selecting whether all the energy is consumed by the building. Or we can say, or we can choose a certain definition that we'd like the design to adhere to. Air permeability of the building envelope as well. We can also define the leakage rates here. I'm not going to play around with that. I'm going to leave it as standard. And also the daily DHW demand. So either having that as the total demand of the building or doing it as the thermal zone. I'm leaving it as the thermal zone, but again, you also have the option to input your own preferences if you had a total demand that you needed. Of course, we can do that monthly and we can do that constant. By monthly, we get an option to go into particular months and amend the demand percentage if we want a more specific configuration. Once that's done, the next one is the location data. So here is where we can model the location of the building. As you can see here, I've selected Alicante, which is in Spain. Of course, you can do whatever you, wherever your building is. You can see here with that model, well, particularly it's an EPW file. So these EPW files, if you don't have them for your particular city, they're easily accessible on the internet. You can find your EPW file and be able to import that with that. So you can see here, I have a few cities here that I'm able to import. So easily just being able to import, and you can see the details change corresponding to that location. Of course, I can also amend the orientation of the building, the undistributed temperature of the soil. I can make that monthly as well, so I can go into it and actually change it if I want. I'm going to leave it as constant. Domestic hot water supply. Constant or monthly. Again, I have the option to go in and amend that. I'm going to leave it as constant for this. Condensation for the outdoor temperature, average annual temperature, and annual humidity. And I'm going to leave those just as the EPW file states. But of course, when we go into high detail works, we can amend those as well. Wind distribution, you can see here that also is featured in the EPW file. Global iridescence on horizontal surface, that's imported as well. Of course, I can make some different views about these graphs that actually come with the EPW file. And of course, lastly, the outdoor temperature, the most important. So we have our maximum daily temperature in pink, minimum daily temperature in blue, and the average daily temperature corresponding to the green line over the year, with June, July being the hottest, and December, January, February being the winter months. Of course, we have some different options here as well, some particularly just previous options, zooming options, redrawing, panning around using that option, and also printing. We can also print this as well quite easily, along with all the other different graphs that we have here. That's basically the location data as well. Of course, I have some different SPF climate conditions as well, corresponding to that EPW file again. So quite easily to model your own, quite easily attainable to model your own city here. Then, of course, we have some different options for zones, and we'll get into that a bit later when we look at zones. Our domestic hot water systems, we can insert a new domestic hot water system here. Our air conditioning systems, we're able to use our wizard here to create our own air conditioning system that we want to reside in our building. So we have multiple different types of air conditioning systems. Water air conditioning system, direct expansion, air conditioning systems, and also constant performance equipment. So we're going to go through this a bit later on, but just a quick overview about the workflow. Then here we have our editing tab. So we have the multiple editing so that it can fast track your editing. So if you have multiple different rooms, multiple different zones that have similar characteristics, we can use our multiple editing tab to select particular rooms that we want, select them as spaces. So not just rooms, sorry. We can also multiply edit zones, spaces, and terminal units as well. And also our library of spaces as well. So that's quite easily done here. So I'm able to introduce ventilation, infiltrations, operating conditions and classifications of the zone, basically just to fast track that. So if we're dealing with a large project, quite easily attainable. Then there's a few editing options, ability to search our libraries for particular aspects, cut paste options. Here we can actually check the model. So when we're checking the model, what this basically does is tells us here on the dialogue that comes up here, the different things that we need to do. So of course there's a lot of things that we haven't done because we haven't started the project, but just for demonstration's sake. You can see here that the library hasn't been defined, the window hasn't been defined in the library, so I need to go to the library, go to glazed openings, and you can see that the window here, 1.5 by 1.60 is here, and it hasn't been defined. So we're going to have to do that later. Of course, moving on, we have the com check. Now, basically for our American users, com check is basically a platform that has specific codes built into it. What we can do actually is export our file, so our Eplus file, to the ComCheck application platform, and there we can actually check our design, our energy simulation against multiple different codes from various states in the US. Of course, if you're outside the US and you don't need it, that's fine, but the button is there just to accommodate for our US users. And of course, that's done quite easily if you're familiar with the ComCheck. Basically what it is we've made it quite accessible for a lot of people to be able to check their buildings for energy ratings corresponding to the American standards. Right, so moving on, again, we have our 3D viewer. So this is the big 3D view for our full screen. Basically the same options that we had here, but just in a larger view. Here we have our edges processing. So what we actually have done here at BIM Service Center and CYPE is we've actually created a engine to basically configure the different edges and the heat permeability of those edges quite easily. So if you're familiar with how energy systems work, you know that the edges are the most difficult, the most difficult things to analyze, of course, because you've got, for various reasons. This basically makes it quite easy for us to go into this option and remove some negligent edges and also generate some values and corresponding calculations for those. We'll go into the edges quite in a bit of a detail later on in the course, but just to have a bit of a overview of the building tab. Again, after the edges we have our update button. So what this basically does is do you remember the connection with the BIM Service Center that we had? This is basically our connection with the BIM Service Center. So what this basically does, if I open this full, you can see that I'm able to update the BIM model here. So after I've made some changes, if I want my colleagues to be aware of those changes, I can update the model. So here I have the project, I have the main initiator, and here I have some options. So the new elements in the current BIM model, so the new elements that I've just created, can I include those in the calculation model? Yes, I'm going to say that. Modified elements in the current BIM model, I can update the elements if they've been checked, if they've been modified, and I can also recover the deleted items in the calculation model. So these are quite specific things that we would need to, that we just have the option to do. I can also remove some elements in the current BIM model as well. So if I made some changes, I can remove those, or if I want my colleagues to view the changes and also view the old model as well, I can uncheck these boxes. Assigning types as well. Here I can create types for the elements. Flag has checked the elements with the typology attached, and also again with the directory for searching typology. So I'm going to leave that unchecked. I can also select the IFC files which I want to include. Now, of course, I already predetermined that I'm going to include all of these in the file, so I'm going to accept that change. Once that's done, what's basically happening now is all the changes are being updated to the BIM Service Center. Now, as you can see, while this is happening, I have that connection done. So that connection with the synchronizer is happening, and I'm able to, as you can see now, the update process results updated. 7 groups have been updated, and I can accept that change now. So as you can see, things have been updated here, and I'm free to go on and have a check of that A+ course. Now, if I go back to the BIM Service Center, let's log in here again. And if I go to my projects, I should be able to see the most recent project. So let's go back to the project that I've done, last change. Here's the RenoZEB project. And I should be able to see my model corresponding to there. Now, of course, that model hasn't been amended, but I should be able to see the different changes that I've just done there. So that's basically it. Again, we have the connection here, so I'm able to verify whether I'm connected as my user, and that's basically the building tab. In the next video, we're going to be looking at the floor plans tab, and thereafter the analysis tab, and then we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of stuff, going into particular spaces, into particular architectural elements, and defining our compositions, as well as looking at how we can generate some new zones, some domestic hot water systems, and some air conditioning systems as well. So looking forward to that. All right, guys, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.